Tony Beets did not plan to name a new foreman in Season 16. This was supposed to be a smooth year. Gold prices were strong, the Indian River ground was finally paying off, and momentum was building. Everything pointed towards stability. There was no reason to change leadership. In Tony's world, changes usually mean trouble, and this season was meant to be about progress, not disruption. After just 5 weeks of mining, the numbers spoke for themselves. Tony had already pulled 775 ounces of gold from Indian River. That put him firmly on track to hit his massive 6,500-ounce goal. At that moment, Indian River was the heart of the entire operation. It was the only site producing real money. Every ounce mattered. Every hour counted. Any delay threatened thousands of dollars in lost gold. That pressure made leadership more important than ever. Tony relied heavily on Cousin Mike, his most trusted and experienced right-hand man. Mike knew the ground. He knew the crew. He knew how Tony worked. When Mike was around, things moved fast and problems stayed under control. Then, everything changed without warning. Cousin Mike was forced to leave suddenly on an emergency trip to Europe. The timing could not have been worse. Tony was left without his main foreman during one of the most important stretches of the season. There was no time to prepare, no time to train someone new. The mine did not slow down just because a leader was gone. Tony did not search for a replacement. He did not hold meetings or weigh options. He made a decision the only way he knows how: fast and direct. Jacob Moore, still new to the Beets crew, was named acting foreman overnight. There was no celebration, no congratulations, no handshake. Tony did not frame it as an opportunity. He treated it like a task that needed to be filled. Jacob was given the title, the responsibility, and an unspoken message. If he failed, it would be noticed immediately. For Jacob, the moment was overwhelming. Being trusted, if that is what it was, meant everything. But it also felt like standing on unstable ground. One mistake could end his time at Indian River. Tony Beets is not known for patience. He expects results, not excuses. The gold did not care who was in charge. The machines did not care either. The ground demanded the same output no matter who held the title. Jacob understood that quickly. Every job Tony gave him felt like a test. Every delay felt like a mark against him. Jacob was still learning how Tony worked. Speed mattered more than comfort. Action mattered more than explanation. Being right was not enough. You had to be fast. This was not a promotion. It was a trial. Tony made it clear that expectations had not changed. The wash plant had to run. Gold had to move. Problems had to be solved before they became expensive. Whether it was morning or midnight did not matter. The operation did not stop. Jacob tried to meet the challenge with confidence. He wanted to show that he could handle responsibility without Tony standing over him every second. That confidence was tested almost immediately. At the early bird cut, spring meltwater had flooded the ground. What should have been productive pay dirt had turned into a muddy pond. Without draining the water, mining was impossible. The situation needed a fast solution. Tony gave a simple order: set up a submersible pump and clear the water. To Tony, this was basic work, something that should be handled quickly and without discussion. But Indian River has a way of making simple jobs complicated. The equipment was worn out, clips were broken, connections did not line up. Every fix uncovered another problem. Jacob and the crew worked through each issue carefully, trying to solve it the right way, but time kept passing. From Tony's perspective, it was taking far too long. Frustration built fast. Tony stepped in and took control himself. He dragged pipes into place. He forced connections together. He showed, without words, how quickly the job should have been done. When the pump finally fired up and water began to drain, the lesson was already delivered. Tony did not hide disappointment. He made it clear that delays like this cost money. He reminded Jacob the tasks must be handled fast, not perfectly. Then came the warning every Beets crew member knows well: everybody is replaceable. For Jacob, it was a hard moment. He understood that he was not there yet in Tony's eyes, but he also knew that learning under Tony Beets is never gentle. Failure is part of the process. With cousin Mike still gone, Tony had no choice but to keep Jacob in the acting foreman role. The season had to move forward. The wash plant had to run non-stop. Jacob now carried the weight of keeping gold flowing day and night. And the real test was just beginning. With cousin Mike still away, the responsibility on Jacob only grew heavier. There was no backup foreman to lean on. Every decision now passed through him. The wash plant needed to stay running around the clock. Gold production could not slow down, not even for a few hours. Tony expected the same results as always, no matter who was in charge on the ground. Jacob quickly learned that being acting foreman meant being available at all times. Early mornings blended into late nights. Problems did not wait for daylight. Whether it was 6 in the morning or close to midnight, the plant had to stay alive. If something went wrong, Jacob was the one expected to fix it. The crew watched him closely. Some were supportive, others were unsure. Leadership changes always create tension, especially when the person stepping in is still proving himself. Jacob understood that respect could not be asked for. It had to be earned through action. He focused on keeping things moving. Fuel deliveries were checked, equipment schedules were adjusted. Small issues were handled before they grew larger. He tried to stay ahead of problems instead of reacting to them. That balance was harder than it looked. Then, something happened at the center of the operation. The wash plant began making a strange noise. It was not loud at first, but it was wrong. The sound did not match the normal rhythm of the plant. Jacob noticed it immediately. Experience told him that ignoring unusual sounds was dangerous. Machines often give warnings before they fail completely. Stopping the wash plant is never an easy decision. Every minute it is down means lost gold. Tony hates downtime. Everyone on the crew knows that. Shutting down production without approval can lead to serious consequences. Jacob hesitated, but only for a moment. He made the call to shut the plant down. That decision carried risk. If he was wrong, he would be blamed for wasting valuable time. If he was right, he might prevent a disaster. Jacob trusted his instincts and climbed inside the plant to investigate. What he found was serious. A cracked frame on the shaker deck was starting to fail. Bolts had shaken loose, allowing a chute to slam repeatedly into the frame. Each impact weakened the structure further. The damage was not yet catastrophic, but it was close. If the problem had continued unnoticed, the shaker deck could have torn itself apart. That kind of failure would shut down the plant for days, maybe longer. The season could have been put in danger. Jacob did not wait for instructions. He gathered the crew and explained the issue. Welding equipment was brought in. Cracks were sealed. Loose parts were replaced. The chute was secured properly to prevent further damage. The work was intense and time-consuming, but necessary. Hours passed as repairs continued. The pressure stayed high. Every minute offline felt heavy, but Jacob stayed focused on doing the job right. When the work was done, the wash plant was brought back online. The noise was gone. The plant ran smoothly. Gold production resumed with only a few hours lost. Later, Tony called to check in. This time, Jacob delivered the update himself. He explained what happened. He explained why the plant was shut down. He explained how close the operation came to a major failure. Tony listened. He understood the risk. He knew what a shaker deck failure would have meant. This was not a small issue. Catching it early may have saved the entire season. This time, since naming Jacob acting foreman, Tony's reaction was different. There was no shouting, no sharp criticism, just quiet acknowledgement. Jacob had made the right call. That moment did not turn him into a permanent foreman. It did not erase earlier mistakes, but it mattered. In Tony's world, awareness and action carry weight. Jacob had proven that he could protect the operation when it mattered most. The pressure did not disappear after that. Expectations stayed high. Tony still demanded speed. Mistakes were still pointed out, but something had shifted. Jacob was no longer just filling a gap. He was earning trust, and with cousin Mike still away, that trust would soon be tested again. After the wash plant crisis, the days did not slow down. In fact, the pressure only increased. Gold production was back on track, but the margin for error felt smaller than ever. Tony's 6,500-ounce goal still loomed over the operation. Every ounce mattered, and every delay felt heavier as the season moved forward. Jacob could feel the weight of the role settling in. Being acting foreman was not about one big decision. It was about constant attention. Small issues appeared every day. A loose hose, a worn belt, a machine running slightly hotter than normal. Each problem demanded quick judgment. Waiting too long could turn a minor fix into a major failure. Tony continued to watch closely. He did not offer praise easily. Most feedback came in the form of pressure. Questions were sharp. Expectations were clear. Jacob understood that silence from Tony often meant approval, while attention usually meant something was wrong. The crew began to respond differently as well. After seeing Jacob handle the wash plant issue, some of the doubt faded. They saw that he was willing to take responsibility. He did not shift blame. He made decisions and stood by them. That mattered in a place where trust is built through action, not words. Still, leadership under Tony Beets is never comfortable. Jacob learned that quickly. There was no room to relax. One good call did not buy forgiveness for future mistakes. Every day started fresh, and every task was judged on speed and outcome. Tony pushed hard because the ground demanded it. Indian River was producing, but it would not last forever. Weather could change at any moment. Equipment could fail again. Time was always the enemy. Jacob began to understand Tony's mindset more clearly. The pressure Tony applied was not personal, it was survival. The operation depended on momentum. Slowing down even briefly could mean falling behind for good. This understanding helped Jacob adjust. He stopped overthinking some decisions. He focused on moving forward instead of waiting for perfect conditions. He learned when to act quickly and when to slow down. That balance is difficult, especially under constant scrutiny. Cousin Mike's absence stretched on longer than expected. That meant Jacob remained in charge longer than anyone planned. What was meant to be temporary was becoming a real test of endurance. Tony did not say much about it, but he allowed Jacob to continue running day-to-day operations. That alone spoke volumes. Tony does not leave responsibility in the hands of someone he does not trust. Jacob still made mistakes. Some decisions took too long. Some problems were handled less cleanly than Tony preferred. But the key difference was that nothing major was missed. The plant stayed running. Gold kept coming out of the ground. Slowly, Jacob found his rhythm. He learned how to communicate with the crew more clearly. He learned when to push and when to listen. He learned that leadership was not about being loud or confident. It was about staying steady when things went wrong. The season moved forward under that steady pressure. Gold totals climbed. The operation stayed alive. The crisis moments became fewer, not because problems disappeared, but because they were caught earlier. Tony noticed this, even if he did not say it directly. By this point, Jacob's role as acting foreman was no longer just about filling space. He had become a stabilizing force during an uncertain time. That is not something Tony Beets ignores. Season 16 was proving something important. Leadership is not always chosen. Sometimes it is forced by circumstances. What matters is how a person responds when the responsibility lands on them without warning. Jacob did not ask for the role. He did not campaign for it. He stepped into it because the operation needed someone to stand there. That alone earned a level of respect. And as the season pushed on, the lessons from that moment would stay with him long after the title of acting foreman was gone. As the season continued, the early chaos slowly turned into routine. The crew fell back into a rhythm, and the operation began to feel more stable. But stability on a Tony Beets mind never means comfort. It simply means fewer surprises, not fewer expectations. Jacob now understood that leadership under Tony was less about authority and more about accountability. Every choice had consequences. If a call saved time, it mattered. If a call wasted time, it mattered even more. There was no middle ground. Tony did not change his tone or soften his approach. He remained demanding, direct, and often harsh. But Jacob realized something important. Tony's criticism was not random. It was aimed at keeping the operation sharp. Weak points were exposed quickly because weak points cost money. Jacob began to adjust his mindset. Instead of seeing pressure as an attack, he started treating it as information. When Tony stepped in or questioned a decision, Jacob listened more carefully. He learned what Tony valued most: speed, awareness, results. The crew noticed the change. Jacob stopped second-guessing himself as much. His instructions became clearer. His reactions became faster. When problems appeared, he acted without hesitation. That shift made a difference. The wash plant ran smoother.
Downtime dropped. Small issues were addressed before they could grow. The operation felt more controlled, even under constant stress. Cousin Mike's absence still hung over the site, but the panic that came with it was gone. Jacob had filled the gap well enough to keep things moving. That alone was an achievement in Tony's world. Tony never announced approval. He never gave a speech or praised Jacob openly, but he also did not replace him. Responsibility remained in Jacob's hands. That silence was its own message. The deeper lesson of the season began to take shape. Leadership was not about comfort, titles, or confidence. It was about endurance. It was about standing in the middle of pressure and not folding. Jacob learned that mistakes are expected. What matters is how quickly they are corrected. Excuses slow things down. Action moves things forward. Tony's style forces growth. It is uncomfortable, it is unforgiving, but it produces results. People either adapt or leave. There is no space in between. Jacob chose to adapt. By stepping into the acting foreman role during one of the most critical points of the season, he learned lessons that cannot be taught in training or meetings. He learned what it means to carry responsibility without protection. He learned that trust is built quietly through decisions made when no one is watching. Season 16 was never about permanently changing leadership. It was about survival. It was about keeping gold moving during uncertainty. Jacob's role existed because the operation demanded it, and when Cousin Mike eventually returned, the dynamic would shift again. But the experience Jacob gained would not disappear. Once someone has carried that weight, they do not forget it. Tony Beets did not set out to name a new foreman. Circumstances forced his hand. What followed was not a promotion story, but a pressure story, one that showed how quickly responsibility can change a person. In the end, the mind did not reward comfort or hesitation. It rewarded awareness and action. That is how leadership is tested in the Klondike.
The feeling they had on the mine. This difference often decides who returns stronger and who burns out. Parker watches this happen every year. He sees which people grow and which fade away. Experience matters, but mindset matters more. The ones who last understand that the mine is not their whole life. It is a tool, a very hard tool, but one that can build something bigger if used right. Season 16 also showed how much responsibility Parker carries. Every choice he makes affects dozens of people. When to push harder, when to slow down, when to spend more money, and when to pull back. These decisions are not made lightly. Even with television money, mistakes are costly. That pressure explains why Parker often looks tense. Success does not bring peace when the risk never ends. Each season resets everything. Past wins do not guarantee future results. The ground does not care about reputation. The crew understands this reality. They know that one good season does not promise another. That uncertainty is part of the deal. It keeps them sharp. It keeps them hungry. The television side adds another layer. Being watched changes behavior. Some crew members rise under the spotlight. Others struggle. Not everyone is comfortable knowing their worst days will be replayed on screens around the world. Still, most accept it. The exposure brings opportunity. Recognition opens doors. For some, Gold Rush becomes a launch point to other careers. For others, it becomes their identity. Season 16 highlighted how these paths begin to separate. Veterans settle into leadership roles. New workers test their limits. Everyone learns where they fit. The paycheck at the end of the season acts as a mirror. It shows whether the cost felt worth it. For most, the answer is yes, at least for now, but the question always returns. How long can this last? How many seasons can a body handle? How much pressure can a person carry before something breaks? These are not questions answered in one season. They unfold slowly, year by year, crew by crew, decision by decision. What Season 16 truly showed is that success in modern mining is not clean or simple. It is layered. It blends hard labor with storytelling, risk with reward, failure with stability. The crew's paycheck was not a surprise to those who understand the system. It was confirmation. Confirmation that the operation is built to survive bad ground and bad luck.
As the next season approaches, expectations rise again. New goals are set, new challenges wait. The cycle begins once more. And when the machines start up again, the crew will be ready. Not because they forgot the pain, but because they remember the reward. That is the truth behind the paycheck.
As the season progressed, Jacob's confidence continued to grow. Each decision he made, from adjusting sluice setups to directing the crew during breakdowns, reflected a deeper understanding of the operation. He no longer relied solely on instructions from Tony. Instead, he began anticipating issues before they arose. His observations became sharper, his timing better, and his problem-solving more precise. The crew noticed it too. Tasks that had previously caused tension and delay started to run smoothly under Jacob's guidance. Even longtime workers began to defer to his judgment during moments of uncertainty. This shift was subtle but significant. Respect in the mine is earned, not given, and Jacob was earning it steadily. Yet challenges never fully disappeared. Season 16, like every season under Tony Beets, brought unexpected problems. Equipment failures, frozen hoses, and shifting ground conditions tested every part of the operation. Each crisis was a reminder that stability is temporary. Jacob learned to treat each issue as a learning opportunity. Instead of panicking or second-guessing, he focused on analyzing what caused the problem, how it could be fixed efficiently, and what could be done to prevent a repeat. The mindset of seeing every challenge as both a risk and an opportunity became his signature approach. It allowed the mine to function more consistently and minimized costly downtime. The role of acting foreman also came with a human element Jacob had to navigate. Crew morale, fatigue, and personal conflicts required attention beyond just machinery and schedules. Jacob found himself mediating disputes, encouraging worn-out workers, and motivating those who were hesitant or unsure. His approach was calm but firm, balancing the need to maintain authority with empathy for the team's struggles. In this way, he became not just a manager of operations, but a leader who could hold people together under immense pressure. The lessons of leadership extended far beyond gold recovery. They were about people, communication, and the psychology of a team under constant strain. Financial pressures were another constant factor. Tony's expectations were clear. Gold must keep moving. Every decision had a monetary impact. Jacob's understanding of the connection between operations and revenue deepened. He learned how small mistakes could ripple into larger financial losses, and how quick, decisive action could preserve both time and money. It was a harsh but effective education. By the midpoint of the season, Jacob's ability to balance operational efficiency with cost awareness became apparent. The mine was running smoother, the gold output steadier, and the team more cohesive. His actions directly influenced the bottom line, and Tony took note, silently, as always. Safety remained an ever-present concern. Season 16 had its share of near misses, unstable ground, heavy machinery moving in tight spaces, and the constant danger of freezing temperatures. Jacob quickly realized that leadership wasn't just about pushing for results, it was about protecting lives while still achieving objectives. He began integrating safety checks into routine operations, emphasizing vigilance without slowing down the work. Crew members began trusting his judgment not just for productivity, but for their own well-being. In Tony's world, survival and success are intertwined, and Jacob's growing understanding of that balance marked a turning point in his development. As the season neared its final weeks, Jacob reflected on his growth. The acting foreman title was temporary, but the experience was permanent. He had learned the true cost of leadership, sleepless nights, constant pressure, and the weight of responsibility for others. He understood that authority is fleeting, but the skills and mindset developed under pressure last a lifetime. Season 16 was not about accolades or recognition. It was about proving that he could carry the operation through chaos and emerge stronger. The mine had tested him, and he had adapted. Tony Beets observed all of this quietly. He never announced praise, never offered public acknowledgement, but his decisions spoke volumes. By allowing Jacob to maintain control during critical operations, Tony demonstrated trust in his abilities. That trust, earned under fire, was more valuable than any formal title. Jacob had stepped into a role he did not seek, under conditions he did not choose, and succeeded because of his focus, adaptability, and calm under pressure.
That is the kind of leadership that survives in the Klondike, where stakes are high and mistakes are costly. The final weeks of Season 16 solidified the lessons learned. Equipment ran efficiently, crew morale remained stable, and gold totals were strong. Jacob's approach to decision-making, people management, and operational oversight left a lasting mark on the team. Even when cousin Mike returned, the experience Jacob had gained could not be undone. His understanding of leadership, accountability, and the subtle dynamics of the mine had matured to a level few ever achieve. Season 16 became a story not just about gold, but about personal growth, resilience, and the demanding realities of life on a Tony Beets operation.
As the season approached its conclusion, the anticipation among the crew grew. Season 16 had tested everyone, from new workers to seasoned veterans. Gold totals were strong, but the real story was how the team had adapted to the challenges thrown at them. Every breakdown, every frozen hose, every unexpected delay had been a lesson in patience, adaptability, and teamwork. Jacob's role as acting foreman continued to shape the crew's experience. His calm, decisive actions created a sense of stability that had been missing during the earlier chaos of the season. Crew members began to see him not just as a manager, but as someone they could rely on when stakes were high. Payday was approaching, and tension mixed with excitement. Each crew member wondered what their efforts would bring. Season 16 had been grueling. Long days, harsh weather, and constant pressure had pushed everyone to their limits. Yet, despite the difficulties, morale remained intact. There was a quiet sense of pride in what had been accomplished. The crew had survived one of the toughest seasons in recent memory and kept the operation moving. For many, this paycheck represented more than money. It was validation. It was proof that their hard work, sweat, and endurance had paid off. When the first paychecks were handed out, the reactions were immediate and varied. Faces lit up